Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I am going to make the audio book of chapter 10 Kathmandu of Beehive NCERT 9th class English book. So let's start. Chapter 10 Kathmandu. Before you read, first, do you like traveling? The writer Vikram Seth enjoys it very much. In his book Heaven Lake, he describes a long journey from China to India via Tibet and Nepal. Second, have you heard of places like Ajmer Sharif, Madurai, Sanchi, Varanasi, Sarnath, or Halibid? Can you name some other places like these? Third, what do the surroundings of a holy place in your city look like? Think about it as you read Bikram Seth's description of Kathmandu. First, I get a cheap room in the center of town and sleep for hours. The next morning, with Mr. Shah's son and nephew, I visit the two temples in Kathmandu that are most sacred to Hindus and Buddhists. Second, at Pasupatinath, outside which is a sign proclaims entrance for the Hindus only, there is an atmosphere of febrile confusion. Priests, hawkers, devotees, tourists, cows, monkeys, pigeons, and dogs roam through the grounds. We offer a few flowers. There are so many worshippers that some people trying to get the priest's attention are elbowed aside by others pushing their way to the front. A princess of the Nepalese royal house appears. Everyone bows and makes way. By the main gate, a party of saffron clad Westerners struggle for permission to enter. The policeman is not convinced that they are the Hindus. Only Hindus are allowed to enter the temple. A fight breaks out between two monkeys. One chases the other, who jumps on a sibling, then runs screaming around the temples and down to the river, the holy Bagmati, that flows below. A corpse is being cremated on its banks. Washer women are at their work and children bathe. From a balcony, a basket of flowers and leaves, old offerings now wilted, is dropped into the river. A small shrine half protrudes from the stone platform on the river bank. When it emerges fully, the goddess inside will escape, and the evil period of the Kali Yuga will end on earth. Third, at the Bodhanath Stupa, the Buddhist shrine of Kathmandu, there is in contrast a sense of stillness. Its immense white dome is ringed by a road. Small shops stand on its outer edge. Many of these are owned by Tibetan immigrants. Felt bags, Tibetan prints, and silver jewelry can be brought here. There are no crowds. This is a haven of quietness in the busy streets around. Fourth, Kathmandu is vivid, mercenary, religious with small shrines to flower adorned deities along the narrowest and busiest streets with flute sellers, hawkers of postcards, shops selling western cosmetics, film rolls and chocolate, or copper utensils and Nepalese antiquities. Film songs blare out from the radio, car horns sound, bicycle bell rings, stray cows low constantly at the motorcycles, vendors shout at their wares. I indulge myself mindlessly, buy a beer, buy a bar of marzipan, a cone on the cob roasted in the charcoal brazier on the pavement, rubbed with salt, chili powder, and lemon, a couple of love story comics, and even a Reader's Digest. All this I wash down with Coca Cola and a nauseating orange drink, and feel much the better for it. Fifth, I consider what route I should take back home if I were propelled by enthusiasm for travel per se. I would go by bus and train to Patna, then sail up the Gangas past Banaras to Allahabad, then up the Yamuna past Agra to Delhi. But I am too exhausted and homesick. Today is the last day of August. Go home, I tell myself. Move directly towards home. I enter a Nepal airline office and buy a ticket for tomorrow's flight. I look at the flute seller standing in the corner of the square near the hotel, in his hand a pole with an attachment at the top from which 50 or 60 basuris protrude in all directions, like the quills of a porcupine. They are of bamboo, they are crossed flutes and recorders. From time to time he stands the pole on the ground, selects a flute and plays for a few minutes. The sound rises clearly above the noise of the traffic and the hawkers' cries. He plays slowly, meditatively, without excessive display. He does not shout out his wares. Occasionally he makes a sale, but in curiously offended way, as if this were incidental to his enterprise. Sometimes he breaks off playing to talk to fruit seller. I imagine that this has been the pattern of his life for years. 7. I find it difficult to tear myself away from the square. Flute music always does this to me. It is at once the most universal and most particular of sounds. There is no culture that does not have its flute. The reed knee, the recorder, the Japanese shakuhachi, the deep bansuri of Hindustani classical music, the clear or breathy flutes of South America, the high pitched Chinese flutes, each has its specific fingering and compass. It weaves its own associations. Yet to hear any flute is, it seems to me, to be drawn into commonality of all mankind, to be moved by music closest in its phrases and sentences to the human voice. Its motive force too is living breath. It too needs to pause and breath before it can go on. 8th. That I can be so affected by few familiar phrases on the Basuri surprises me at first, for on the previous occasions that I have returned home after a long absence abroad, I have hardly noticed such details, and certainly have not invested them with the significance I now do. By Bikram Seth, an extract from Heaven Lake. Now I am going to read the poem. A slumber did my spirit seal. This poem is about the death of a loved one. How does the poet feel when he thinks about her death? How does he imagine her to be after death? A slumber did my spirit seal. I had no human fears. She seemed a thing that could not feel the touch of earthly ears. No motion has she now, no force. She neither hears nor sees. Rolled round in earth's diurnal course, with rocks and stones and trees. A poem by William Wordsworth. Thank you for watching my video. Hope you like this and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you all.